Alright, so today's video we're going to talk a little bit about drivability and why you have to keep tabs on these cars that you own. Alright, so this is the distributor cap off of my white 70 Monte Carlo, and basically this is what I was riding around on. Now the car was given a fit every time it would rain about starting up. If it was warm or hot, it would ran fine. I just drove the car to Kentucky in May, got 19.5 miles to the gallon with it. And after seeing this, you know, I don't even see how this car ran. But I still drove the car at least once a week, sometimes more. I got more than one classic car, so I have to really make a point that I'm driving all of them, and I do. But as I was at the Charlotte Auto Fair the other day, I seen a Corvette that was sitting on the side of the road on the way to the Speedway, and I looked at my wife and I said, that right there, the reason that car is broke down is because it don't ever get driven. And it's stuff like this, corrosion that builds up and stuff, times 10. What I'm discussing, all right, I just drove this car to the rod run, and I've put over 20,000 miles on this car since I bought it in 2017. And, you know, it's not perfect, but it's a great driver, you know. I mean, I didn't put the chrome stuff on here, but I just put a new harness here before I went to the show. I actually put it on the day I left. And that's another thing. I found silicone somebody had put around the wiring connector under the fender, and the bright lights on the car would never want to work. Well, no wonder. I don't have trouble with these cars like a lot of people do. And it's because they get driven a lot. Like, I am very blessed. I work for myself, so I can go and take the car, any car I want, out to lunch. And then I come home, and then tonight I'll go eat somewhere else, and we'll drive something else. You know, the Tahoe will sit there. I only have the Tahoe for rough stuff. You know, if I'm going to pick parts up, or the weather's bad, or calling for storms, or going to, you know, whatever, going to the dirt track to see a race. You know, you got to have a daily beater car. But these cars get drove, you know. But we come back over here to this right here, and I mean, these people that say that they wouldn't trust their car to drive any distance unless it's following them on a trailer. I get that when everything on the car looks like this, because you don't ever drive it, and this is what happens to the fuel system and the ignition system and etc. So these old cars are very reliable if you drive them and you take precautions about stuff. Ethanol fuel is the whole thing about ethanol fuel being bad. Is, I'm not saying in a fuel cell or whatever, but in my experience, and I have 100,000 miles to prove it here, the last 5 or 6 years on these cars, the ethanol fuel myth, bad for older cars, is a myth. There's been other YouTubers do videos on that proving it, and E10, in reality, it will evaporate out of your carburetor. So if the car does sit for an extended period of time, it's not like the old gas, and it won't varnish and gum up. The ethanol gas literally evaporates away. So be careful about your vented fuel systems, it will evaporate. You will have less gas than you did when you parked it. I've already ran into this. I ran out of gas in my Monte Carlo with the fuel cell. No foam in the fuel cell. I have heard horror stories about foam in fuel cells with ethanol fuel. But about my fuel cell, and I ran out of gas thinking I had gas in that car. And because it's a vented system, it evaporated away. So they say for long-term storage, use a non-vented gas cap to keep your gas in the tank. If not, it will vent away. Because I do know ethanol will dry out rubber a lot faster. So a lot of your rubber seals and stuff, needs to be sufficient. But ethanol in the fuel is the least concern that we have with classic cars or any car concerning gas. Fuel is not 100% refined gasoline like it was in the good old days. They're using a hodgepodge of synthetics and some type of whatever. It's above my head, but I've heard all kind of stuff. But a lot of it, they're even talking about, synthetic gas and, gas made from other things and all this kind of stuff. And you just don't get the gas mileage with the stuff anymore. It's just not as good across the board. The ethanol is the least of the concern. But we can only do and control what we can control, and keeping your cars where they can be driven and driven without trouble is the most important thing. And as of right now, the ethanol fuel is just not the problem. It's just not. And I can be a test of that because there's, like I said, 20-something thousand miles since 2017 on this 57. There's about 80,000 miles on that Monte Carlo since 2000. So in the 25 years me and my papa's owned it, it's had about 80,000 miles put on it. That's not a lot of miles in 20 years, but it's enough miles to where if ethanol fuel is going to cause a problem, it would. So it has an original gas tank, no issues, all original brake lines. My 57, all original gas lines. Well, brake lines too, but they don't have fuel going through them. I've not had any trouble at all. So the ethanol fuel being harmful to this and that, it's just not valid. But what is valid is what mainly this video is about, is your cars that you never drive and then you wonder why they break down on you. That's why. So it's not the fuel, it's not the ethanol gas's fault, it's not the cheap Chinese parts fault, and a lot of times it is the cheap Chinese parts. We can blame those too. But most of the time, it is either a lack of maintenance, which is what this was. I just had overlooked this. But I drove this to Kentucky and back. This would have been a 5-minute fix on the side of the road. Your gummed up fuel system or your other issues because you don't drive your car is not a 5-minute fix. So drive your cars, people. That's all I got to say for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. You can send any restoration inquiries to my email. That contact info will be in the video description.